Happy VideoCast Wednesday,
Yay!
everybody.
Yes, it's always wonderful to be here. We're so glad that you guys are joining us, and we are super excited because we are jumping into intuitive eating principle number 3.
Yes, we are going to work on making peace with food, and in the deeper work style,
Of course,
we are going to work on making peace with your
feelings and
your needs, right?
Yeah.
Always drawing parallels between your relationship with food and your relationship with your emotions, which really equals your relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
And over again, we are so amazed how these processes really are parallel.
It's true. You know, we always read through the chapters ahead of time in the intuitive eating book just as a little refresher. We've read them many times, and it's almost like you can literally take the word food out of that sentence and plot feeling or need, psychological need, into the sentences. And then you have like a whole new layer of, the work that you're trying to do within yourself. So it's really beautiful.
And you know what? It's not just happenstance. And, over and over and over again, when we work with clients or we work with our global population, we really talk about to change your relationship with food, you have to work on changing your relationship again with your emotions, which we break down into with your feelings and your needs. And the fact of the matter is that if you are not supporting your feelings and your needs, right, you are going to be compelled to turn to food because those emotional needs need to be met. And even though it might not be a conscious process, your psyche turns to tried and true, what it knows has gotten comfort and relief in the past. And for many of our people that struggle with emotional eating, that has historically been food. So it is really, to me, I mean, like we can look at it from one angle, like food, and then we can bring it back to feelings and needs. I look at it as if your relationship with feelings and needs is not where it needs to be, pun intended, then it is going to create this really difficult relationship with food that cannot change without you changing on a deeper level your relationship with your emotions and your relationship with yourself.
And isn't that even the process that happens with food, right? It's like your body gives you these natural signals like, hey, I'm hungry, and hey, I'd really like to eat this. But then if the noise comes in from diet culture of, no, we can't have that, we shouldn't be hungry, that's a bad food to eat, and you deprive yourself of that, then you get this kind of sideways experience with the food where, you deny and deny, and then the craving builds, and then eventually, it can turn into an overeating or a binge eating episode. So we can see that process just within your relationship with food. And then, of course, we can take that out into what happens with your feelings and vice versa. So the processes and the parallels between them are astounding.
Yeah. It's really, it's beautifully uncanny, right? It just really is. So let's talk first about kind of this top layer. Let's talk about how do you make peace with food? And I am sure just even that phrase sounds like everyone out there is saying, are you kidding me? Like, I can't make peace with food. Peace has been my enemy. I can't trust myself around food. Food is, the reason for all of my unhappiness. I've tried this for decades.
I think we should insert the eye roll emoji here, right?
And the anxiety emoji. We need to have like an anxiety emoji because so many times when we talk about making peace with food, the very thought of letting down my guard. Like, are you kidding me? Like I can no longer make food the enemy and guard myself against it. If I make peace with food, then it is going to ruin my life.
Yeah, and I think peacefulness feels so far away, when you've been living in a really chaotic and anxious and love-hate relationship with food. It's like a peaceful relationship. What the heck is that? It just feels so impossible.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So always we want to first normalize, okay? If this is difficult for you, if this causes anxiety, if you say, yes, everyone else in the world can do this, but I can't, You're not alone.
Right.
And those thoughts, while they are certainly valid from a feeling perspective, in reality, we know we trust is not accurate. Okay. No matter how long you have struggled with this, no matter how difficult this is, over time, step by step by step by step, imperfect step by step,
Yeah.
stumble by stumble,
Yeah.
okay, eventually it is possible to make peace with food, whether you've struggled with emotional eating, binge eating disorder, you have a history of bulimia, or maybe it even started out with anorexia, okay? It totally is possible to end up having a loving relationship with food. And I see your smile
Of
because it's such a beautiful end result, okay?
It sure is.
Yeah, that is possible and really drives our work every day. We know what that's like to be on this end of it, and we know what it's like to be on this end of it.
Yeah.
So it's a worthy goal, and it makes a very arduous journey worthwhile to know that it actually is possible, and we promise you it is.
And it really is going to start within. This is about making peace. You know, if we can offer a subtitle to these wonderful intuitive eating principles, you know, I think we would like to offer today intuitive eating and intuitive feeling principle number 3, you know, making peace with your feelings and your needs. And this is really about getting comfy cozy with your psychological and emotional self. And really loving that part of you, embracing that part of you, responding to that part of you. And when you
trusting and trusting that part of you, okay?
Absolutely.
Trusting that part of you. This is not something that you need to control. Okay, we'll go over that now, and I'm sorry I interrupted your flow, but trusting, because I think so much of what drives that dieting mentality, that chronic dieting mentality, is like, I can't trust myself, I can't trust my body, I can't trust my hunger cues, and I have to control it. So again, it's kind of like this exact opposite, you know, make peace with it. No, I have to actually control it. I have to be on hypervigilance all the time because I can't let my guard down.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're able to do this deeper work within yourself and craft that peacefulness relative to your emotional self and the needs that come along with that, you will find that this very naturally and organically extends out into your relationship with food and other, you know, relationships that you have as well. So why don't we start by talking about kind of this diet overeat cycle from this deeper work lens. So how do we see this same cycle play out relative to our feelings and needs? Right?
Well, let's first label it, really spell it out relative to food. And we'll just do this really briefly. But we do think it's important. I mean, maybe you're new to the treatment of binge eating disorder, and it's not crystal clear yet how any kind of restriction, any kind of dieting mentality is always going to lead to overeating or binge eating, okay? Which then most of the time leads to issues with weight as well, okay? We know that in the research, it shows that problems with weight, and the research does use the word obesity, that what predates that, okay, is dieting behavior that has then given rise to binge eating behavior, okay? As a byproduct of dieting, you develop binging, and as a byproduct of binging, you struggle with weight, okay? So that is the flow of sequence. So the answer is not to go back and try to do another diet, because we know over and over and over and over again that dieting, restricting is going to lead to an overeating episode, which is then going to lead to more weight gain.
Right. It's a really gruesome cycle.
Yeah.
So I like to think about kind of this, you know, dieting and restricting relative to food, which then leads to binging. When I think about this relative to emotions, I kind of think of the classic, I'm fine, you know, like the emotional dieting, if you will, is the restricting of, you know, connecting with and expressing your emotions. And how many times, Dr. Dooley, are we in our sessions and we say, so, you know, how are you feeling? Like, oh, I'm fine.
fine.
We call that the four-letter word in therapy. And really what that is it's a suppression of all that's going on inside, right? Because we are all complex human beings. We feel a lot of things, especially all of us wonderful, highly sensitive people who have a very colorful and vibrant emotional world going on inside of us. So when we're in that kind of emotional dieting place, we are shut off from all those emotions on inside. So we might say, I'm fine. We might not have any awareness of what we're feeling, right? We might feel kind of numb. We might be so preoccupied with busyness. We might really be up in our heads and not really connected to all that we're feeling and what's going on in our body. So I kind of think of that as like an emotional diet, feeling fine. And this fear that if I really were to kind of give in to, these feelings that are there, similar to, I don't want to give in to these food cravings. There's this intense fear that if I do that, I'm going to completely get engulfed and lose control.
Right. Yeah, so I kind of like overlapping with that, I want to really emphasize, when I think about this dieting mentality and we relate it to kind of feelings and needs, it is this sense of I chronically need to control. Okay. So you just talked about maybe being disconnected, not being aware, maybe not even being kind of comfortable with those emotions. And then it does overlap into like, my feeling states are something for me to, on a regular basis, keep in check. Yeah. Okay. And this might relate to a history of, don't be so loud. If you are angry, go in your room and come back when you can have a smile on your face. Okay.
Right. Or why do you always overreact to everything?
Exactly. Or you're too sensitive, okay? Our highly sensitives, I know that for me, that was like my father's favorite phrase for me was you are too sensitive. He actually called me Julie Crybaby. So I was just like this tender little soul. So when that happens, yourself and then your psyche gets into this mentality. I can't have spontaneous emotions. That if I do, it's going to be a negative. I can't trust them. There's going to be something wrong with me. They're too much. They're going to kind of take over. So I, through my day, have to be in check to make sure I don't have too much emotions. I'm not too loud. I'm not too happy. I'm not too frustrated. I'm not too mad. Right? Very similar to, I have to make sure that I don't eat too much. Okay. I got to make sure that I don't eat this category of food because if I do, then this bad thing is going to happen. Right.
Exactly.
So that dieting mentality, I always have to control, because if I allow myself to spontaneously be the way I am naturally in the world, it's going to lead to something negative.
Right. Just like if I spontaneously feel a certain level of hunger and allow myself to eat however much my body needs to satisfy that hunger, it's going to be too much food and something bad is going to happen, right? I'm going to gain weight. I'm going to be unhealthy. People are going to judge me, whatever the bad thing is.
Right. Yeah. So let's remember these concepts and these processes as we then start going into a little bit about more specifics of how this relates to feelings and how this relates to needs. With what you're just talking about, I think it's important to know that, feelings are not, or I should say a feeling is not this endless, like endless, bottomless pit of emotion. Okay. Let's again parallel this to food. So let's say somebody really likes ice cream. They don't let themselves have ice cream. They think if I'm going to have ice cream, I'm going to overdo it. I'll never stop. I want it so much. I will never stop. And unfortunately, what happens behaviorally is when you restrict, don't allow, and then finally you bring it home from Safeway on a Sunday afternoon when you're really tired, you open up that half gallon of ice cream and you end up eating the whole thing, feel guilty about it, go back to Safeway, get another one, and then say, see, look, Dr. Julie, on Monday morning, I can't trust
Look what
myself. I can't
happens.
trust myself around ice cream.
Yep.
Okay.
One bite and then it's all over.
That's right. That's right. So the same goes then for feelings. If you are somebody that, let's say, has held your anger in check, don't allow it, have to control it, don't allow it, have to control it. Well, of course, it's going to build up. And in a vulnerable moment, when you do let that anger out, you're not only going to have, a torrent of anger based on the current event, but you're going to have a whole bunch of like waves that come at you based on lots of other things that have made you feel angry that you have not allowed, that then comes like really pouring out, that then make you feel like, oh my gosh, I unloaded on this person. I got really angry. My behavior was not acceptable. See, I really do need to hold my anger in check and control it.
Right, right. And you might even get that feedback from the person that's on the receiving end of that emotion. Like, wow, we were talking about this relatively small thing and you had to like blow it up into this huge thing. And then it reinforces that internal belief that maybe you got from very early on in life that you're too much, your emotions are too big, you can't control things, and it reinforces that.
Right, exactly. And reinforces is the key word, because then what ends up happening is it ends up, kind of you grab a hold of the wrong problem.
Yep.
See, the ice cream or the anger is the problem, when really what the problem was your process relative to ice cream or your process relative to anger, meaning you were trying to over control it. You were thwarting it or compartmentalizing it. And then when it finally came out, it came out in a way that felt out of your control.
Right,
so that's the process that is problematic.
Yeah.
And that's why the principle, make peace with food, make peace with your feelings, make peace with your needs, is so important. Because it says, if you in fact allow it on a regular, consistent basis, it's not going to come out in this exaggerated, out of control way. It actually is going to allow you to have one bowl of ice cream and be done. It's going to allow you to say, hey, can we talk about something? What you said really made me feel angry, and I'd like to process it through.
Right.
Okay.
I really like to think of this with the hunger fullness scale too. For those of you who have seen that, we have this scale from 0 to 10, and 0 is no hunger at all, don't want any food, and 10 is ravenous. I could eat anything in sight. Give it to me right now. And, we're shooting for starting to eat around that 3, 4, 5 range. So you're hungry, you could eat, but you're not starving. And then we want to shoot for stopping eating around a 6 or a 7, where you're satisfied. You can tell that there's some food in your stomach. Maybe you could have a few more bites, but you're really satisfied with where you're at. And when we can eat in that range on a consistent basis, we're not swinging to either end. We're not swinging to, I'm so full that I can't eat, or I'm so hungry that I'll eat anything in sight. We just stay really balanced. So we really want to look at the same process with our feelings. We want to be able to stay connected to our feelings in that moderate range. So like you said, we want to address them as they're starting to bubble up. So we don't have to address every tiny little thing that causes the smallest kernel of anger. Part of living is being able to kind of let some things go. But if that anger is starting to turn into a 3 or a 4 on that number scale, it's time to address it. And we want to address it at that scale so that we don't wait till it's an 8 or a 9 and then we explode.
Yeah.
And when we do that, then we have this experience of, I can handle this. It comes out in a way that aligns with my values. If it involves other people, they're more responsive, and it's a positive experience that reinforces wanting to do it that way again. If we don't address our emotions and our needs in that more moderate way, we're going to have this buildup. And I really want to bring in another food word of cravings. So if you're wanting, let's say, Oreos, and you have a little hankering for them, but you ignore that craving is going to build and it's going to build and it's going to build. Cravings don't just go away, they build. And then you're going to eat the Oreos at the 10. Maybe that looks like a binge episode or an overeating episode, and you beat yourself up. And the same thing happens with our emotions. If we don't address them when they're at that 3 or that 4, our body actually does create emotional cravings. It says, I've got to get this anger out, right? And then you find yourself being, that driver that's like so upset at everybody around you, or, you're angry about something that happened in the day, and you come home and you take it out on your roommate or your partner or your kid, and you're angry at them. So our body craves emotional expression and really having the space to process those emotions. And you either get to decide that you're going to create that space in that moderate range of maybe 3 to 6, or your body's going to create it for you. And it's going to come out in a big way, in a sideways way that feels awful, and then reinforces, see, I can't do this. I'm broken.
Yeah, I actually see cravings as a positive thing. And, you do want to respond to the craving early on so it doesn't become a compulsion.
Right.
But I look at the craving, whether it's a feeling craving or a need craving or a food craving, as, hey, this is my body telling me what I need. This is my emotional system telling me what I need. This is my soul telling me what I need in the form of needs. And like, how cool is that? Like, it's just like,
hey, you didn't hear me the first time.
I'm just going to knock on your door and I'm going to hand you exactly what I need. And if we listen to that, and I appreciate so much you making it super concrete with the scale. I love the 3 to 6, right? That's this beautiful kind of window of opportunity to be able to respond in a healthy way where you feel relatively in control, and I'm going to say in healthy control. And it is important that we respond to ourselves, that we build a relationship of trust that says, if I'm asking for this, I'm going to trust the purpose of it, whether it's a food, a feeling, or a need. And guess what? If you satisfy it, I promise you it's not going to be endless.
Right.
Okay? Your body truly doesn't want 2 half-gallons of ice cream. Okay? I promise you that. Now, you're not going to believe that if you're in this restrict binge cycle, right? But eventually, when you do what we call desensitizing you from that process, and you eat, ice cream, I guarantee you're not going to want it where it's overdone, because that's truly not what your body needs or wants. Okay. And it's the same thing with feelings, and it's the same thing with needs.
Absolutely.
Right? So think about that lovely window of opportunity. Think about cravings as a beautiful asking. It's a signal that is saying, please pay attention. I'm giving you a really clear message, and I'm doing it nicely. I'm not doing it in the form of a compulsion. And if you listen to it, and really what I thought was, if you make peace with it, then you can live in harmony, and it will always be exactly what your physical, your emotional, or your system, or your soul needs.
You can truly trust that.
You can't trust that.
There's this other piece that they discuss in the intuitive eating book about the Last Supper mentality. And I'm sure, you all have this experience with the Last Supper mentality, because it's such a fundamental part of the diet binge cycle, right? So the Last Supper mentality relative to food, if you haven't heard of this, is this idea of, I'm going to start the diet tomorrow. And so I better clear out everything tonight, right? I better have all the foods that I want to have, all the binge foods. How many times do we hear people say, like, I'm just going to get rid of it all, right? I'm going to eat it all tonight. I'm just going to be done with it, get it out of the house, so tomorrow I can start fresh.
Yeah, or I'm going to satisfy everything I want. I'm going to get it out of my system, Dr. Julie. I'm going to get it out of my system, and then I'm going to do this on Monday.
Right.
I'm like, okay. You can try that.
So the Last Supper mentality is this idea of, I'm going to have like this last pleasurable hurrah with all my favorite foods. And then tomorrow, or whatever it is, I'm going to like have this clean slate and get back to this controlled, perfect eater, good eater space, right?
Good control, manage myself.
Deny cravings. Not really enjoy it.
Yeah. All that stuff. that you think is a positive,
Yeah.
and to your psyche it's saying, hell no. Okay, go ahead.
So this is a very black and white approach, right? I'm going to do it all now so that I have none of it once I start the diet. So if we go back to Oreos, I must have a craving for Oreos
Yeah,
right
yeah,
now
yeah,
because
yeah.
they're like on my mind. So I will be having Oreos tonight.
With milk.
Yes.
Okay.
So this last supper mentality is the all thinking, and then the diet mentality is the none thinking. So let's bring this back into our feelings and our needs. And how many times do we do this to ourselves where we have this last supper mentality? So you had this great example of how this plays out with going on a vacation.
Oh,
right?
okay, sure.
So yeah, go for it.
Well,
It's a good one.
yeah, I was talking about mostly, you know, only giving yourself kind of, I guess it does fit with the Last Supper. So how many times do you like work yourself to death, right? Like you're working, 60, 70 hours a week and just saying, oh, I just have to get to my vacation. I just have to get to my vacation. I just have to get to my vacation. Not giving yourself satisfaction or balance, right? Leading up to it, but thinking over here, I'm going to give myself what I need. And so then you go to Bora Bora, right?
I like how you think.
I mentioned Bora Bora a lot as far as need fulfillment. It's definitely on my list.
Okay, we'll add that to the list.
So you go and then you just kind of pull out all the stops. You
Right.
give yourself the things that you really, really enjoy. And that might be sleep, that might be relaxation, that might be food. Sometimes that's too much alcohol, But the mentality is I am going to only give myself this, right? In this certain space. And then unfortunately what happens is then you come back from vacation and then you throw yourself back into this really unhealthy and or dysfunctional kind of state of being.
Right,
okay?
right. Which would be like the dieting on Monday morning.
Yes,
right?
yes, exactly,
Mhm.
exactly.
Yeah.
So really with that example, like with needs, the goal is to be able to say, okay, well, we can't go to Bora Bora every week. But what we can do is we can say, I'm going to balance out my work week with some pleasurable activities on the weekend. Okay. Or I'm going to recognize that I am doing too much during the week. I'm going to decrease my work hours so that I can have maybe some nice time during the week to kind of balance it out.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with the dieting mentality. It's saying, hey, I'm not going to just give myself food on the weekend during my cheat day. I'm going to let myself have the Oreo cookies on Tuesday night because that's when I really feel like I'm hungry for them.
Yep.
And I'm going to enjoy them and I'm not going to go into deprivation the next day. Right. And then if I want them again on Thursday or Friday or a chocolate chip cookie, I'm going to allow that. It's not this restrict, don't allow, and then only let yourself loose on the weekends.
Sure.
There's a lot of programs, and I'm sorry about this if there are trainers out there, and I'm sure, I know not all trainers do this, but a lot of times, there will be trainers that talk about eating clean during the week and then giving yourself a cheat date on the weekend. They don't really know what they're doing, but they're setting up a dynamic for binge eating disorder. Restrict, let yourself completely go and you go crazy, you binge, feel terrible, and then you go back into restricting, which is the worst thing that you could do for your physical body, not alone mentioning your emotional self.
Absolutely. And going back to the vacation example, I think that's so good. And how many times do you have this really pleasurable thing you're looking forward to, the vacation or whatever it might be, as kind of this Last Supper experience. And then you get there and you get sick, right? Your body's like, I am so run down and worn out that I just like kind of fall apart. Right. So I think that happens a lot too. And, or you plow through and you're like, I'm going to have fun because this is my only chance to have fun. And so maybe you're not feeling great. You try to, have a pleasurable, fun experience anyway. It ends up being pretty lousy. And then you come back not refreshed, right? Feeling bad about yourself, beating yourself up. Isn't this what happens with a binge, right? It's like you go in with this Last Supper mentality of, okay, I'm going to really just enjoy the heck out of this. And the whole time, you're having that inner critic saying, why are you doing this? You know better. Don't do this. You're going to feel lousy tomorrow. Maybe you're starting to get really full and it's uncomfortable. It's not the pleasurable experience that you imagine it to be. And then you kind of shackled yourself yourself to that Monday morning of, back to being good, air quotes, having things be rigid and under control. And the whole thing is just this lousy, defeated experience.
Yeah. Yeah, it ends up just being an unhealthy process. And usually when a process is unhealthy, it also means it's not fulfilling, it's not enjoyable. And neither end of it works, right? Not where you're trying to control yourself by, dieting, and then not when you're, allowing yourself to go and you're binging, and that doesn't feel good either.
Right.
How many times, wake up in the morning, you've got that food hangover, you just like feel lousy because it's really has been a negative thing for yourself physically.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So this concept then of making peace with food. So maybe, and hopefully after we've just gone through this description, that doesn't sound like such a scary, like, why the heck would I want to do that? Concept, because ultimately making peace with food means not taking yourself through these horrific cycles that we know are so disheartening. It just, you spend so much time and energy kind of in these cycles. How many times do you just feel lousy about yourself? You end up judging yourself for all different things that really aren't true, like I'm weak, or I don't have willpower, or I'm broken, or what's wrong with me. I know better. So like living with disordered eating it's not just about food, and it's not just about weight. It becomes this life and this lifestyle that is just so tragic. It takes so much of your energy. It creates so much negative relative to your self-view and your self-worth. And I will tell you that when we work with clients, they always lead with, I want to change my food behavior because I want to change my weight. I mean, that's like what 90% of our clients lead with. Very shortly into the work, they're like, I want to get out of this headspace. I want to value myself no matter what. I don't want to walk around feeling my body every moment of every day in disdain. And I want to feel good and normal, okay, which will make me feel better about myself. So making peace with food it's both the byproduct and it's the process of how you get there.
Right.
Okay. And having food just be food is glorious. We just came back from lunch. I don't even know what we ate.
It was delicious.
Okay. Well, I can't even remember because I'm not thinking about it anymore. I'm not thinking about the calories. I'm not thinking about what it did or did not do to my body. I'm like engaged. I'm here. I'm present. I tasted it when I tasted it, and then I'm done with it. Okay. So food can be pleasurable. It can be an event, but it doesn't have to be your life. And that's what this wonderful concept of making peace with food. Again, it's both an end result and it's a process.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is about embracing all of your emotional self. So, going back to the intuitive eating book, the authors will say, like, so what is the key here? What's the answer? Well, the answer is unconditional permission to eat. Okay, that is the solution. It's unconditional permission to eat. And what that means is all foods are on the table, pun intended, right? There is no such thing as a good food and a bad food. All foods have some value, whether it's nutritional value, psychological value, a hybrid of the two. All foods have value, all foods fit. So let's bring this to the emotional space, right? This is about unconditional permission to feel and to have needs. There's no such thing as a good feeling and a bad feeling. Do some feelings have more of a pleasurable experience? Absolutely. There are some feelings I prefer, but I also appreciate that all of my feelings have value.
And we also need all of our feelings. Okay. So when you were talking, I got, kind of flashes back to, both clients and kind of personal experience, where it's like, wait a minute, what do you mean it's equal? So like anger or rage is like, okay, like, is that okay to feel? And the key is unconditional,
Yeah.
okay? And it's the same thing with pizza versus a salad.
Yeah.
So the answer, the hard, scary, but truthful answer is yes, okay?
Mhm.
And the reality is we need all of our emotions,
Mhm.
okay? Frustration, anger, rage, envy, jealousy
Mhm.
are just as integral to our emotional system as love, joy, generosity,
Mm.
okay? They are, we need all of them,
Mhm.
okay? When we work to understand them, when we approach them with curiosity,
Mhm.
see what they're telling us, see what gave rise to it, and then what we need to do to take action in response to, then we recognize that, yeah, maybe that frustration was healthy, right? Because I was at work, this was not a good thing, I need to
Mhm.
address it. So please know this is a hard concept to
Mhm.
wrap yourself around, that all feelings, all food, and all needs, whether you intellectually think it or not, serve some necessary purpose.
Mhm.
The goal is not to exile or to compartmentalize or to thwart
Mhm.
emotions that you intellectually think are bad. The process is, with curiosity, work to understand them. What is this telling me that I need, or I need to feel or process, or I need to eat, so that my system functions optimally? Because
Right.
you are always given exactly what you need,
Mhm.
always.
Mhm. Absolutely. And
Okay.
our bodies, our physical bodies don't function well when we have a very, very limited palate, right?
Yep.
I mean, we have to eat variety in our foods in order to get all of the vitamins and the minerals and the macronutrients and micronutrients that our body needs.
Yep.
So it's really the same thing with our feelings. We
Mhm.
can't live in a state of happiness all the time,
Right.
because we're going to be oblivious to when a boundary gets crossed,
Hmm.
and we should be feeling angry about that. Or
Hmm.
if, we have a significant loss and we don't let ourselves feel the sadness, like we're missing out on that experience. So we have to create space for all of these emotions to then have a really healthy emotional system going on inside, just like we need to eat a variety of foods to get all of the nutrients that our body needs to function.
Yeah. So I'm wondering how this is landing on you, and it's these are new emotional concepts, and you might have heard them before, but maybe you haven't felt them before in this way. When we're really saying you need all of these, okay, that they are integral to your entire system, and we are always in a state of dysfunction if we reject or deny or don't listen to. Okay, I would love to hear what you think of that, and I will
Mhm.
tell you it is absolutely true.
Mhm.
Okay, um, it is absolutely true. We need the whole of what is the reality and the truth of what is there. We don't get to choose what we put there. We don't get to choose our food cravings. We don't get to
Mhm.
choose our feelings, right? What we can do to optimize our well-being is to unconditionally accept and listen,
Yeah.
and then step in and respond to and support.
Mhm.
And I would love to kind of challenge, people to try that concept on, acknowledging that there's going to be tons of fear. This goes,
Mhm.
against probably what you've heard and lived for decades. And always, when you work to make peace with food, when you give yourself unconditional
Mhm.
permission or emotions or needs, the pendulum's going to swing in the other direction, right? Because let's say you've been holding down anger. Let's say you've been holding down desire for chips,
Mhm.
and then you let yourself eat it. Well, your mentality is not going to be caught up yet with, hey, I can have this whenever I
Right.
want, so I don't have to overdo it. You're first going to go into that kind of automatic
Mhm.
space of, oh my gosh, I'm eating chips, therefore I'm going to binge, because after this bag's gone, I'm not going to allow myself to have it for another month. So you have to kind of catch up and accept that your psyche is not going to know that you are not putting the stops on it anymore. It takes a while for that to happen. Same with
Mhm.
anger, same with telling someone that you love them, If that's all new to you and you're afraid you're going to become a blubbering idiot when you tell somebody how much you love them when you haven't done that ever
That's
before,
okay.
you probably are going to be a blubbering, not idiot, but you're going to, kind of, it's going to come out,
Just a little clumsy.
in a big wave, right?
Yeah.
And so know that that's going to be a healthy part of the process, and try to have kindness and compassion regarding that, and trust that the more that you do it, it will totally normalize to the point where it's going to feel like, oh my gosh, this is within my control, even though I'm not trying to control it.
Yeah, and that made me think too, when you do allow yourself to feel and you allow yourself to express those feelings, there are even going to be times where there's an opportunity to maybe talk about how you're feeling, or, you have the space if there are feelings there, and you find that you feel really regulated and there's not a lot of emotion going on. Believe it or not, every once in a while for highly sensitives, that can happen. And so you find that, wow, when I am satiated emotionally, I'm not looking for any and all opportunities to, be in deep feeling or talk about deep feeling. Like, there are going to be times where the space is there and you don't really want it. So how does that relate to food? Well, there will be times where, the bowl of chocolates will be sitting there and you're like, you know what, that just doesn't even really sound good right now.
Right.
And so it's there. I could have it, don't really want it. That's the peacefulness,
Yes.
right? That is the peacefulness where it's not this battle of, okay, it's there, I really, really want it, but I shouldn't have it, in this, war that goes on inside. It's just this peaceful, like, do I want it? Yes, great, have it. If I don't, it's okay. So the same will be true with your emotions as well, and you can really trust that. It's a little messy getting there, right? Because you kind of have to undo some of this long-standing deprivation and control that's been in place, but you will get there. And there's one caveat I want to say relative to intuitive eating. And, there's a very common myth that we hear when we talk about intuitive eating, which is, so what you're telling me is I can eat whatever I want, whenever I want, without any kind of, thoughtfulness put into it. And, there's a bit of, yes, we want you to eat what you want. And yes, we want you to eat when you're hungry. But it's not like just throw caution to the wind and don't consider, what is your body needing, and, all of these different pieces. And the same is going to be true with your emotion. So you're going to connect with anger. That this isn't saying, well, I'm angry, and so I'm going to go out and just kind of express it however I want, whenever I want. There still needs to be a thoughtfulness to, okay, I'm feeling angry. I want to honor that. I want to respect that. I want to cultivate, experiences for me to work through that anger. And I'm still going to hold myself accountable to do it in a really respectful way, both respectful to myself and to whoever I might be interacting with. So I just want to put that out there as well.
This is such an important point, and it is something that we're going to have to come back to over and over again, because I think it's really hard for people to understand the important nuances of this. So just when you're talking about, like, with that example, with whether it is an emotion or it is food, first of all, it is always important, Dr. Ashley said, in response to being hungry. Okay, so what you want to be able to do when you are allowing yourself to eat whatever you want without condition, okay, that doesn't mean when you're physically stuffed, give yourself permission to keep eating, right? So I like to talk to clients about really kind of approaching it with this mentality. I am going to allow myself to approach this in a healthy way, okay? And not healthy like diet or low fat or anything like that, but an emotional process that is healthy, okay? So that would be, if you want those chips, right? But you want those chips because you're really frustrated about something, and you're recognizing, I just had dinner, I'm not physically hungry, I really want chips because I'm really, really frustrated. That doesn't mean give yourself permission to then go ahead and eat the full bag of chips. Like, ideally, what you would do is recognize that and say, I can have these chips when I really want these chips, when I'm physically hungry, and when that's what I'm really wanting and asking for, right? Then that's not a problem. But if I'm eating the chips in response to an emotion that I really would benefit in a healthy way, working through my frustration through journaling or picking up the phone and talking to this person, or bringing it into my therapy session so that I can figure it out.
Mhm.
So you want to be able to then channel it into meeting the need based on where it's coming from. Okay. So that's kind of an important thing,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
making sure that you're not eating for emotional reasons.
Mhm.
Okay. And then also, being able to allow, but then also, have some other healthy parameters. Like we talk about trying to then connect with satiety signals. So ideally, you want to be able to eat the food that you want, but you want to be able to eat that to a point of what I call happy full. Okay, so
Mhm.
where the emotional need is satisfied, where the physical need is satisfied, you're not physically stuffed, but you're not still hungry.
Mhm.
So you've given yourself permission. You've given yourself permission to eat the exact food that you want, no problem. But you're going to have some awareness so that you don't say, well, therefore now I can just keep going and going and going and going, right? Because that's not a healthy process.
Right. And we want to do the same with our emotions, right? We
Right.
want to be aware of what's going on, and then we want to be able to respectfully and healthily navigate through that process, both
Right.
within ourselves and within our relationships with others. So it's not about this reckless abandonment and just kind of giving into, whatever emotional or nutritional whim is coming up for you in that moment. It's about saying, okay, this is what's going on for me. Now, how do I want to handle this in a way that's really self-respecting and satisfying?
Yeah, that
Mhm.
still allows myself to address the feeling, but to do it through a healthy process.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah.
How can I address the need? Do that in a healthy process. And how can I address the food and then do that in a healthy process? Yeah. So
Perfect.
these points are really, really hard. And especially when your brain has been in the dieting mentality for so long. Because a lot of times, even when we're presenting this to clients or people in our community, you hear it to a certain extent, and then it can trigger kind of like a PTSD, from,
Mhm.
even if we're talking about, for physical reasons and not emotional reasons. And it can register as, oh, Dr. Julie's talking about restricting, or we're talking about happy full. So she's saying I have to stop at a certain point. Oh my gosh, it goes to portion sizes and,
Right.
all of those other diets. So that might be happening, and then it just kind of goes into this, kind of anxiety, kind of PTSD, emotional response. So oftentimes we have to go over this over and over
Mhm.
and over again to learn really what are the nuances of this process. And
Yeah.
it's really tough. It
It
takes time.
is. Yeah, I was going to say it needs to be a slow process,
Mhm.
So really take it slowly, take
Yeah.
it, meal by meal, bite by bite,
Right.
and listen to this, episode many times over
Mhm.
until this new way of approaching food and approaching your feelings
Mhm.
really becomes the new baseline for you. It
Yeah.
will happen, but you've got to circle around it, enough times before it really starts to become the new way of interacting with yourself and with your food.
Yeah. Please give us some feedback and
Mhm.
also submit some questions. Again, this is going to take a lot of starts and stops and stumbles. And so the more you can submit kind of what you're personally going through, the more we can use it as an educational prompt and
Mhm.
then really kind of flesh out some of the processes to be able to be even more helpful. So please feel free to do that. Know that, if it's a struggle for you, it's going to be a struggle for many, many, many more people. And that's the best way to be able to help not only yourself, but others,
Mhm.
is to go ahead and submit some of those questions. So that would be wonderful.
Yeah, our next episode is a Q&A. So
Yeah.
I'll post in the community requesting questions, but you're always welcome to just post them as they come up for you, and then we will happily answer them in the next episode.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, guys.
Very
Well,
good.
enjoy your unconditional permission to feel. Hopefully, in
Yeah.
that process, you will begin to experience peacefulness
Yeah.
around your emotions and your needs. And we can't wait to hear about it. Let us know how it's going.
Yeah.
Okay.
Take care. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.